I'm a process-oriented person. I'm not a product-oriented person. I mean, the product is important in the end, but what I love about this work is the process of getting it together. And that process involves making jigs and sharpening your tools and all of the activities that go into the process along the way. I started learning everything on machine tools. So just learning to use a table saw and a jointer. You know, there's a lot of hand skill goes into properly using a jointer. You don't just push a board across a jointer. You apply a lot of English to the board to make it work properly. And that took a while to master. Of course, it helps to have a jointer that's perfectly set up. But even then, you can put a crown or a cup in a board by how you hold your hands as you push the board across the jointer. The table saw does tend to be the center of the modern shop. I'd say that I do 50% of my mortise or my tenons on a table saw and 50% of my tenons with a handsaw. It just depends on how many I'm doing and the nature of the work. But I will say this regarding saws. I've said for years that if they wrote a law that said you could only have one kind of saw in your shop, I would have a good bandsaw. Because a good bandsaw properly set up can do all the jointery that a table saw can do, plus cut curves. You might notice I've got two bandsaws. I've got this one here with a 1/4-inch blade in it for all kinds of finer work, and I've got the one in back with an inch blade in it for resaw and heavy duty work. And both of them are justified even in a small shop like this. I still rely on machines to make jobs go faster. My ethic is that whenever a machine doesn't compromise the design, the ultimate design, or the ultimate finish that you want, I'll use a machine tool. It's just faster. It just is. I'm not a purist about any of these things. Whatever works. My first piece of advice to someone, a novice, would be to take the time to learn the hand tools. And then you know when you can rely on a machine tool to speed the process up, but you don't have to ever compromise your design according to what only a machine tool can accomplish. There's so many situations where in the end, the only real solution to a problem is the deft use of a hand tool. My favorite thing to do is to use a spoke shave. To shave a piece of wood with a spoke shave. That's one of the most satisfying. It's physically satisfying. It's sensual. You get physical pleasure out of it. Sharpening it. That's my favorite hand tool thing to do. And then of course working on a lathe is my favorite machine tool thing to do. As you can see from looking around now, I've got a lot of Powermatic tools. That's partly because I've had a relationship with Powermatic over the past 7 or 10 years, I guess. This lathe is better than any lathe I've ever had before. I've had a couple of old lathes, but this one is far superior. It's almost a cliche at this point. I let the wood tell me what it wants to be. Because I'll put something in the lathe and I may have a preconceived notion of what I'm going to turn out of it. And frequently I accomplish what I set out to do. But just as frequently, the wood will take on a shape. I mean, I'm not attributing some kind of mystical life to a piece of dead wood, but just in cutting the wood and taking note of the features in the wood will define a form that it wants to look, that it looks best in, that is not what you initially had in mind. I was a while to come to carving. I remember the first carving I ever did. I was selling chairs, fairly simple Queen Anne chairs, to a couple of old German brothers up in Nashville that had a showroom for traditional furniture. And one day they said, "Can you do any carving?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Let's give it a try." They gave me a foot blank for a ball and claw foot and said, and an example to copy, and said, "Come back with this, see what you can do." And so I bought some carving tools. I bought a set of carving tools and started working on it. And I took it back to one of the old German brothers, and he looked at it and he said, "Not enough tools." So that was my introduction to old world mentorship. If you can at all afford it, take as many of the classes that are available today that you can take, because a week's worth of instruction with a master can be worth up to a year's worth of trial and error. There's dozens and dozens of schools of woodworking and lots of opportunities to learn. Making something that you designed yourself is a thrilling and very daunting process. I mean, when you're reproducing something that's acknowledged to be excellent, you don't have to worry about whether your customer is ultimately going to like what you've done. But when you're making an original design piece, you've got to have the confidence that your vision is ultimately going to be appreciated. And that's much more daunting to me. It's easy to make a piece that's not everything it ought to be. And sometimes you only know when you're finished, and you say to yourself, I should have done this and that. And it took me a while to learn not to point that out to my customers. They would say how pleased they were, and I'd say, "Yeah, but you know, if I'd only done this and that," and they go, "Oh, yeah." The process of making an original design piece of furniture is often very, very involved. And you have to dream up new ways of doing things, which is fantastic to come up with a solution to a problem. It's great to go to bed wondering how in the world you're going to do what you envision, and waking up in the morning and having solved the problem in your sleep makes you want to get out to the shop right away.